Alright, welcome to the fourth video in the series where we're talking about the Pinball 2.0 kit. And this video we're going to focus on the thumpers and bumpers. And remember from the first video we made cutouts for a new style thumper. Evel Knievel has a combination of both thumpers and bumpers, so it's kind of an anomaly. I think there's only one other game, Silver Ball Mania, that I know of that has both thumpers and bumpers, but we'll cover that in the video. And to start, we'll start with an unboxing of what we just bought from Pinball Life. Let's see here. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, this is our thumper assembly. We also ordered some LED GI lighting and a spinner to test out with this. And our stand-up targets. All right. We'll save the stand-up targets for another video, as well as the GI lighting. I'm curious to see how this spinner works, but I don't think this is the one we're going to go with. But I'm just curious to see how that works. All right, the thumper, and again, we've modified our playfield to accept this all-in-one thumper. And part of the reasoning is that the thumper is getting it adjusted properly is one of the more complicated things in a pinball machine. And with this all-in-one assembly, everything is already lined up for you. So like this switch, the switch is built into the base, which is then automatically aligned to the skirt, and then it activates and everything is sort of set up. We may have to adjust this contact because it looks a little too close right now, but we can actually that looks pretty good. Okay, so that's actually really tight, but that's kind of what you want. You want it to be tight, and getting that adjustment by trying to do the mechanisms on front and back can be really complicated, as well as having to mount this piece separately. So this gives us a lot of advantages right off the bat. Okay, I'm going to list this part number in the project document. You'll notice that I ordered this without a bumper cap, and the reason is that we're actually going to change this base, because the bumper cap we want is going to be the vintage Bally style, and then obviously this doesn't match. So what we're going to do is we're going to I already purchased these, but I'll list the part number. We're going to replace this newer body with the vintage style body, and then this vintage style body accepts the cap that we want for this game. Okay. The other thing we're going to do is we don't need this lamp. We're going to substitute an RGB ring of LEDs for this lamp bulb. All right, it's not that difficult, but we want to unscrew this. Okay, we can pull this out. All right, we're going to leave this in place. Luckily, we don't have to take anything off from here, right? Because the spring and the skirt are all. No, actually, I take that back. we're going to have to take that out. Nope. Nope, I take it back again. Okay, this, we don't have to take this apart, which is good. All right, because we don't want to take that apart. But we do need to keep these screws. And you'll notice these are just like number 6 sheet metal pan head. You could probably save these for later or give them to a friend. All right, the small posts here go into the larger sockets, like so, and then you'll know that that's correct because there's a space here for where the connecting rod for the ring goes, like that. And then we just take these screws and put them back in. And these screws are going straight into the plastic, so that's why they're sheet metal and not machine screws. Alright, we're just screwing it in. Go alternate one to the other and make sure it stays even. And then we're not going to go too tight. We don't want to crack anything. This is all plastic. Okay, and once you have it, it should be pretty stable. Let's see, I need to screw it in a little bit more. Yeah, make sure this base doesn't move around. It shouldn't move. It's going to be tight. All right, and then the ring should move freely, and then the skirt should still move freely. Okay, all right, that's it. All we did was just change the body here to the vintage style. And you can see that the cap fits that, and with 2 screws here. When I mount this in the playfield, one of them is going to be mounted like this, and then the body's going to be turned, and the other one's going to be, the ones on the upper side are going to be mounted like that, which should work. All right, I'm going to do a couple more things with this. I'm going to show you, we're going to install an LED ring here instead of the incandescent, and that will give us some ability to basically, you know, add special modes where maybe you're tracking the number of hits or you're doing animations, things like that. And then I'm also going to show you, we'll go over how to put the pigtail onto this coil, because what I like to do is I like to have these things, because they're all modular, have them so that you can easily take them in and out if you need to. So we're going to want to put a little pigtail with a connector, and we're going to cover those things right after this. One other thing to note, I mentioned that we're doing thumpers and bumpers. So this thumper, sometimes called a pop bumper is an evolution of a static bumper. And the static bumper is basically the same thing, except without the mechanism for the ring. And it would have just a rubber piece around there that was static. But you could also score points because it has the same skirt, and the switch goes on the bottom of the playfield. So it's the same mechanical components here with the spring and the skirt. But this was just a passive scoring bumper. And then at some point, someone got the idea to make this active by putting a ring here that every time you hit this, the ring would pull down. So that's a major evolution in pinball. And so you don't often see both of these styles in the same game. But like I said, Evel Knievel has both of these. And Silverball Mania also has both of these. So it's an interesting, just an interesting note there. But we'll cover both of these. Okay, we're going to put a little pigtail connector on our coil. And what I like to use for these are Anderson power pole connectors, and they're modular, and you can color code them. And so what I like to do is, for this we're going to have a positive. I use red and pinks for positive. And we have 3 thumpers, so we're going to have 3 different color codes, and so I usually do something like if you saw in the slings, I do red and blue, or pink and blue for the right, and then either red and purple or pink and purple for the left. And this is visualizing it as if it were upside down, right? And then for things that are in the middle, do like a red and gray or pink and gray. So this will be the middle thumper, so we'll do pink and gray. And so we'll get our housings, and then we need 2 pins and some silicone wire. All right, this is 18 gauge wire, stranded with silicone jacket. I'll put a link in the project doc. You can buy this from Amazon. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to strip this back. It's going to have to sit in about almost 1/4 of an inch. So we're going to strip this back first. This is just a common set of wire strippers. Give it a little twist because we don't want any strands coming out of there. Usually I like to strip all the wires I'm working with at the same time. Okay. Then a little bit of a twist with your fingers. Make sure that when you put this in here, these are tight and you don't want little strands sticking out, okay? All right, so we'll put the pin on here, or the wire into the pin. Yeah, see, the strands like to come out. This is also why 18 gauge is good, because otherwise, if you went 16, it might be a little too tight there. All right, from PowerWorks, you can also get this dedicated crimper. It's not too expensive. It's like less than 50 bucks. And if you crimp it, it's perfect. You get a perfect connection. If you don't buy the specialized crimper, you can still use like one of these crimpers that usually comes with like a pair of wire cutters. This is not quite as good. And if you use this, you may want to actually solder the connection as well. Now, it's not best practice to crimp and solder, but that the crimping assumes that you have the right crimper, right? Okay, and this is a 15, so we slide it into here. Pull that out. Okay, we want the pin to be just on the outside edge there, and then we just crimp down. All right, so that's a good crimp. And you notice the way this crimper works is that there's a split on the top of the pin, and I usually make sure that it's going in this way so that this bar doesn't actually help force that apart, right? Okay, that's one crimp. I usually give it a little bit of a bend here because the way this works is that this little hook here is a latch, and it goes into this housing, okay? All right, you notice, you'll see that's the latch that we're trying to get over. So we put this in here. Now, you don't want to force it because you'll damage the wire, but I usually use like a little flathead screwdriver, get on that edge of that pin and push it in. And once it's installed, you should be able to pull on it pretty hard and it won't come out like that. Right, now let's do the other one. And you notice I put the red into red, right? Right. just a little bit of a tweak. And this is the return. And then use the screwdriver just to get that pushed in there. Okay, like so. Now these are modular, so you can connect as many as you want. In this case, we just have two, but you can see there's a boss and a slide there, and this one slides into the, sorry, gotta make sure you line them up. That slides in like that. Now I try to maintain a standard where I always put the high voltage on the left hand side when I'm holding them this way, right? And then all the returns are going to be on this side. And that way, as I'm wiring, I have this consistently in my head that it's high voltage on the left, return on the right. And then that way I don't accidentally get confused. And the way these would connect, if I had a mating connector here, similarly, still the same, left, right. And then when these two mate together, it's basically this is on this side and then turned, right? And then now they mate together like that. All right, so that's how that works. And they even make little latches that come across these pins to hold it together, but not really necessary. Okay, so now we would strip this end. I usually do the same, usually about 1/4 inch. And give it a little twist so you don't have little strands coming out. All right. Okay. Now, and this is the orientation from the back, and the way I would normally do it is this has a natural curl to it. I usually try to solder it so the natural curl is coming up. All right, I'm going to pause right here because I want to do a little sidebar on these coils. Okay, so ideally we would want to have a diode on all of our coils, and some coils come with the diode pre-installed. You can see this one here, right? Now, when you order this from Pinball Life, you can select the coil, and it looks like I chose not the wrong one, but I chose the one that didn't have the diode on it. It's not a disaster because we can just, buy a diode and just solder it on there. But my personal opinion, strong opinion, is that you always want to have a diode on these coils, specifically on these with these new modern driver hardware. Because this will protect your hardware because it acts as a recirculation of the current in this coil, whereas it basically prevents a voltage spike from traveling all the way back to the driver transistor and potentially blowing it. All right, but the question is, these are both a 26 1200, and so the question is, which part number are you getting? All right, so if you order a sling, you have a similar option for the choice of coil, and in the option it includes both the 26 1200 and the coil part number. But on the thumper, it doesn't actually do that. There's a coil that has this part number option, which is the one that you want. But there's also a separate one that just has the 26 1200. Okay, so what is 26 1200? So the 26 is the gauge of the wire, and the 1200 is the number of turns. Now, usually the other option that you'll see is a 23 800. Okay, and this is a 23 gauge with 800 turns. And these coils are both the same size and technically rated for the same power. This one is going to be lower resistance because the lower number of gauge means the wire is thicker, and the 800 means there's fewer turns, which means that the overall wire is shorter. So it's going to have lower resistance. This one's going to have higher resistance. So for the same power rating, This one is actually going to be higher voltage than this one. So whatever system this is Bally here. Whatever system this is likely operating at a lower voltage than our standard Bally. So we don't want this one, but for Bally we do want this one. Okay. The second caveat is that these little letters at the end usually indicate whether it comes with a diode or without. And so AE is obviously without a diode. This OT is with a diode. So there's an option for with or without. And then I would, as I said, my strong opinion is always use a diode to help protect your coil drivers. All right, let's get back to it. All right, we want to solder the diode on first. So we're going to just clip these leads a little bit because we want it to sit right about there. Okay. And I've got my soldering iron. Usually I'll pre-tin the leads of these just a little bit. It's going to be hot. You got to be careful. And also pre-tin these leads here. Need a fan. All right. All right, that's one leg. That's the other leg. All right, now we also tin. We want to tin the, when I say tin, you're basically just preloading it with solder. You want to tin the wire. And again, you want to, if you're going to do this soldering at home, you're going to want a fan. Okay. All right. All right, super important polarity of this connection. Okay, so the red is our high voltage. The diode, this bar on the right-hand side, that's the blocking side of the diode. And so we don't want this to short out, so we want the bar to be blocking high voltage from just shorting through it. And so this is, we want the red on this one. And when it's operating, what normally happens is that when this thing gets turned off, the current becomes enough to, or sorry, as the magnetic field is collapsing, it's creating a current that is going in the opposite direction, and it just stays internal, right? It's called a recirculation diode. All right, so we want the red on the side of the bar of the diode there. We put that there, and the black on this side. This is the return. Okay. And you just, as I said earlier, I try to, there's a natural curvature to the wire, and I try to have it pointing up because this is the play field, and it's going to be easier. It's going to keep it away from these other mechanisms. Okay. All right, that's it for the soldering. Now we're going to do the installation of this and the passive bumper onto the play field. All right, we're going to start with the passive bumpers. Now, one issue I've found with these reproductions, and it's hard to know if it's a problem with the reproduction playfield or the reproduction parts, and this is true if this were like a full thumper. I've seen this before, but the base doesn't actually fit into the hole here. Okay, like this is 0.625 and this is 0.65. So what I usually have to do is get a Dremel with a sanding drum and then open this up just a little bit. Now to do this, but also we want to protect the surface, so I usually put some blue tape over here just to protect this surface a little bit. And then we'll do the drum sanding from the bottom side. All right, this is our Dremel tool. This is going to be a little loud, so I'll probably turn down the audio on the video. You can see how this barely fits here. We'll just do a little bit, and then we'll do a test fit. Okay. All right, so that little bit of sanding was enough to get that to fit. Like we barely even took off that much. So it literally is like 25 thou. But otherwise it's not going to fit. All right, we'll do the same with this one here. Yeah, okay. And hopefully we got all the way through, so we'll take the tape off and check it. A little bit of tape to get some of that dust out. All right, let's check if this fits. Not quite. We have to give it a little bit more. All right, I'm just going to give it just a touch more. Okay. All right. So that fits, and then we want to align these two holes here with the screw holes. All right. These other two holes are for wires for the lights. All right. So now we're going to come in with a number 6 sheet metal screw and put that down. All right, first I'm just going to build out this second one. All right, so this, the spring, the skirt, the base like that, and stick that in there. All right, now we'll screw both of those in. All right, number 6 flathead. As I usually do, I'm not going to go all the way down with the first one. I'm going to make sure we got both of them in there and they're aligned. And once I know I have the alignment, then we'll go down farther and we'll just alternate back and forth. Again, this is all plastic, well, plastic into wood, but plastic parts that we're clamping down, so don't crank on it too hard. All right, should be, you want it to be stable because it's going to be taking hits. All right, there's that one. Make sure it's aligned. All right, now we're going to flip it over and we'll do the thumper. Okay, we're gonna flip this over, but the pop bumper comes up from the bottom like that. But we need to flip it over to mount it. Okay. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, this one's going to mount this way, right? Obviously, because we don't want the switch interfering with this. These could mount this way, but I actually like to do them like so, so that these sort of all come to the same area. The thing you don't want to do is don't mount it sideways like that, right? And the reason is that these holes for the top are like this, and so I can have symmetry this way or this way, but I don't get symmetry this way, okay? But for this one, we're mounting it with the switch back here. All right, and then the wiring harness will sort of come into here and they'll all be in the same spot. All right, we're going to use a number 6 by 5/8. And we'll just do a sanity check. All right, so this is a 1/4 inch boss. Just do a sanity check that that doesn't go down too far. Otherwise, because this could show up on the top side if it's too long. All right, so 5/8 minus a 1/4 inch is fine. And let's see, I'm going to do a little trick to make this alignment a little bit better. Looks like there's a little bit of a gap there. All right, to make sure this is exactly centered, I'm going to take a piece of masking tape, get about a 1/2 inch. Oops, that didn't cut. All right, I'm just going to tape around the base here. If you wanted to, you could remove this tape after you install, but I don't know that you're going to see it. So this could just be temporary once we get the screw alignment. So 1 layer of tape, let's see how that does. Still a little loose, we do that 2nd layer. So this just gives like a couple extra thou to the thickness, but then guarantees that it's going to be centered on that hole. Okay, we really only need this just for the initial mounting, and once our holes are in place, we can remove that tape. Okay, so that's nice and snug. All right, so we're going to use that location for these holes. All right, we're going to screw this down. I'm going to use the drill. I'm not going to pilot this. I don't want to risk piloting, and it's not really necessary since our alignment comes from the base itself. All right, so you just get that in there. And again, we don't tighten up all of them at once. Let's get them in there. Don't tighten it up all the way. All right, I'm short a screw, but I'll come back once I buy some more screws. Okay. Okay. Because this is plastic, I'm going to do the final tightening by hand. Make sure that's secure. It shouldn't be able to lift it, basically. Okay. Let's see what that looks like. All right. All right, looks good. All right. I'm going to do these other two also, and then that will be it. Well, actually not quite. I'm going to put the switches on these bases. Okay, actually that will be it for this video. We'll talk about, we need switches for these passive bumpers, but we'll talk about that in a video when we do all of the other switches on the bottom side of the playfield. All right, so that's it for video number 4, where we're doing the thumpers and the bumpers, and thank you for watching.